Hello and welcome to the December 4th, 2025 Select Board meeting. Tonight's agenda pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter
That should do it.
Okay. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, after notifying the chair of the public body, any person may record or transmit this open meeting. This hybrid meeting is being recorded by the town of Stockbridge. The names of members participating remotely will be announced. Any member of the public wishing to speak must first receive permission from the chair. The agenda items listed are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, but not all may be discussed, and other topics not listed may be brought up for discussion by the public body as permitted by law. The public hearing to consider the application of Vanderbilt Berkshire Estate LLC for the property of Linda Susan Law, trustee of the Linda Susan Law Trust, located at 310 Old Stockbridge Road. The applicant is requesting authorization pursuant to Section 6.1.2 of the zoning bylaws to allow the extension, alteration, reconstruction, or change of use of a pre-existing non-conforming barn, and pursuant to Section 6.1.2 and 6.6 and 6.31 of the zoning bylaws to amend the existing special permit. The property is in the R4 zone. So at this time, the applicant may present and just tell the public who you are.
I need a roll call vote to open the hearing.
So a roll call vote to open the hearing, please.
Hi, Chuck.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Georgia. Thank you. Thank you to the Select Board and Mr. Canellis. My name is Elizabeth Goodman. I represent Vanderbilt Berkshire Estate LLC. We're going to call them VBE for short tonight. We have a team of experts here to present the application to amend the previously granted and adjudicated special permit for Elm Court. This application is an amendment, and our presentation is designed to make that clear, both from a legal and factual standpoint. Our goal is to show you how the revised plan stays within the framework of the existing special permit and doesn't increase the impacts in any category: traffic, noise, lights, stormwater, visual impacts, or density. Everything you hear tonight aligns with that central point. We've organized the presentation so the board can easily see the continuity between what was approved and what is now proposed. And the intent of this project is, in essence, to preserve and adapt and renew the Elm Court Great Estate. I would like to have permission to share our screen. Is that something you can do for us? So I'm going to be introducing our various team members as we go through the presentation tonight. And one question we have for you is, do you want us to continue to present, or do you want to be able to ask us questions while we're presenting?
Probably present and then ask questions,
Yeah, that seems,
because then it'll be smoother.
yeah, we'll just sort of go through. So, okay. And how do I make that fair? In the Zoom call? Oh,
That's pretty sad when you need technological assistance from me.
yeah.
That's scary.
Thank you. So, There we go. That's me. I'm the practice. So our next team member is Linda Law and her business partner Rick. Mistake. Been a little stumble. Oh, yeah. I know, that is an issue, sorry.
Select Board Chair and Select Board members, thank you for allowing us to talk this opportunity. I'd like to introduce my co-general partner, Rick Pizer, he doesn't like that, Dr. Richard Pizer. Rick and I have longstanding ties with, can I put this, I can't even see over it. Rick and I have longstanding ties with the Berkshires. Most recently, we were the owners of Blantyre, but our relationships with this region span decades, both of us. Rick is the only real estate professor to hold a chaired position at Harvard and is globally recognized for his work in land use planning and development. And he helped shape our proposal that complies with existing laws, with land use approvals and the cottage era estate bylaw, and that advances Stockbridge's long-term interests. I have been in the development business for 5 decades, with a career built on public-private partnerships that strengthen communities. Not every project begins smoothly. In fact, most of them don't start smoothly, but the long-term outcomes are consistent and measurable. One example is University Circle, a project in East Palo Alto in California. When we began, the city was known as the murder capital of the country. We acquired more than 40 businesses, relocated 12 nonprofits, and relocated over 100 families. And we did this without one lawsuit. And need I say that California is incredibly litigious and no growth. We built 360,000 square feet of office space and a Four Seasons hotel in the murder capital of the country. This exponentially increased city revenues, created local hiring pipelines, and funded affordable housing. We also institute, and we've done this on every project, first source hiring, which gives complete preference to local residents for positions. Within a few years, the murder rate dropped to 0 and the community stabilized. In 2016, Rick and I purchased Blantyre after waiting, at least for me, 40 years for this opportunity. I have a long history with Blantyre. It was a small and challenging property made even more difficult by COVID. Blantyre was ultimately sold in 2021 when our longtime investor became terminally ill and we needed to liquidate. I have tried since that time 5 times to buy it back with no luck, unfortunately. But the point is simple. We take complex projects that others will not touch, and the result is always the same: stronger public resources, a healthier local economy, and long-term stability. Our proposed plan within the adjudicated 2014 Elm Court special permit is within the adjudicated special permit. The foundation is set. Tonight, we will address why our proposed modification stays within the framework and is a form, not function, of a change. And it is important to note that the modification is a direct result of what we've heard from the community. We've read every article. We've really done a lot of research that no one wanted the massing of what I call a cruise ship addition tethered to Elm Court. We cannot unwind prior decisions. Our responsibility is to deliver the lowest impact, highest benefit version of what is already permitted. We originally had only 3 slides to show what our modification is, because it is form and not function. However, I've had many residents call and say, look, it's been a long time. We want to start at the beginning. So we're going to go through our entire plan. This is an important project for Stockbridge and Berkshire County. As just an aside, when we had the first media article come out, we had 19 million hits, they're called discrete hits, who read the article. The Vanderbilt background, the legacy, and of course the beautiful environment in the Berkshires has given a lot of attention to people. Elm Court will be a restored historic landmark, contribute significantly to the town's fiscal base, and preserve the open space and character of Stockbridge. It is precisely this type of project we have delivered before: careful, respectful, community beneficial, and built for the long run. Thank you, and you'll hear from Rick in a little bit. Okay, thank you.
Okay, our next speaker on the team is Stephen F. Benson. He is the CEO, and he's going to talk about the history and background of Elm Court. Steve has dedicated his career to luxury hospitality operations, built on a foundation as a CPA with Arthur Anderson and Co., and he transitioned into hospitality, spending 19 years working for St. Regis and the Four Seasons Hotel, and now.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I thought it would make sense to anchor the presentation or my presentation in a bit of history. Elm Court was commissioned by Emily Thorne Vanderbilt and William Douglas Sloan. The construction began in 1885. The property is now 140 years old. It was the site of the Elm Court talks, important meetings in our national history. The Treaty of Versailles and League of Nations were discussed at the property. It sprawls 55,000 square feet and 103 rooms. Emily viewed it as a retreat from New York City. Relaxation, family, entertaining, and renewal. Operated really as a private hotel for very elite guests. After Emily's death, her granddaughter ran it as an inn for 9 years. Cost to upkeep and maintain the estate exceeded the family's resolve. The inn closed in 1956. The first attempt to preserve the estate had failed. The estate was abandoned for 44 long years, punished by sun, rain, snow, freezing temperatures, and ravaged by vandals. In 1999, the estate was rescued by Bob Burley, Emily's great-great-grandson. Bob did an amazing job salvaging the estate and began an effort of restoration. After 13 years, Bob's development plan languished, and the estate was put up for sale. The second attempt to restore and preserve the estate had failed. In 2012, the estate was purchased by Amstar, also known as Travasa, to develop the property into one of their lifestyle brands. In 2014, the town of Stockbridge awarded Amstar with a special permit to build a 112-room hotel, a 60-seat restaurant, and a 16,000 square foot spa. That permit remains valid today. Amstar's aspiration withered, and the third attempt to restore and preserve the property had failed. We purchased the property in December of 2022 and spent 3 years developing a business plan to restore and preserve the property. As we embrace this moment, this new moment, and propose the fourth attempt to restore and preserve the property, it's not surprising to any of us that the risks are significant, the costs are astronomical, and the margins are small. Yes, the margins are small and will likely decrease as the project progresses. Why are we doing this? Because we believe that after 70 years of failed attempts to restore Elm Court, it is time to bring back this grand estate's relevance and prominence. How can we do this? Because the town of Stockbridge had the foresight to create the cottage era estate bylaw. This bylaw allows a mechanism to preserve and restore these grand estates. Essentially, it allows a restoration plan to be reimagined in a way that allows economic pathways for investment. Without these pathways, these grand old estates will be condemned. It's important that we recognize this as a community. Recognizing all of this, our core goals are as follows. Number one, conservation. We have clustered our resort residences under a condominium ownership structure to conserve land and space for pathways, enjoyment, and recreation. This has been done intentionally. Our second goal, preservation. We must preserve the manor house and its surrounding structures, further decay, and to restore its historical footprint. Our third goal is feasibility. Any project that comes before you must be financially feasible. Financial feasibility is anchored by a financial plan, which accomplishes two things. One, the mansion has to be restored and it has to be maintained in perpetuity. We stand before you this evening to present our plan. It's an amended business plan which compares favorably to the 2014 approved existing special permit. Our proposal is 74 hotel guest rooms as compared to 112 that were previously approved, a decrease of 38 hotel rooms. We have added 38 resort residences, which essentially has shifted those 38 decrease in hotel rooms to 38 resort residences. The restaurant was originally approved at 60 seats. Our proposal remains at 60 seats, no change. The spa was originally approved at 16,000 square feet. Our proposal is 15,000 square feet, a negligible change of 1,000 square feet. Our hope is that the town of Stockbridge views the benefits of a thoughtful, financially feasible, historically prioritized restoration as something accretive to the community. No plan is or will be perfect. We ask that you thoughtfully consider our proposal, as we believe that it aligns with our shared interests to secure an everlasting future for Elm Court. Thank you.
I would next like to introduce my co-counsel, Jonathan Silverstein, a land use lawyer based in Concord, and he will discuss the legal framework for our application.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, members of the board. It's a pleasure to be back before you and without medical apparatus.
Yeah.
I want to address an issue, first of all. Maybe not. I thought I could get it back in the slideshow. I want to address an issue that I know has been discussed quite a bit at some meetings that we were not able to participate in and in various other forums. And that's the issue of why did we style the application as an amendment or a modification as opposed to a quote unquote new special permit. So I think the record needs to be set straight as to exactly what that means. It's a framework for how we think it makes sense for the board to review this application. There's no legal distinction between a quote unquote new special permit application and a request for a modification. Under Chapter 40A, the State Zoning Act, Section 11, all of the same procedural requirements apply to, quote, a special permit or any modification thereof. So this isn't a way for us to try to shortcut some procedural mechanism or to provide less information. All of the same procedural requirements are going to apply, and perhaps just as importantly, all of the same criteria under the cottage area estate bylaw are going to apply. So, if there's no change, why do we do it? Well, first and foremost, There's an active special permit for this property under the Cottage Area Estates bylaw on record at the Registry of Deeds. It never makes sense to have multiple competing approvals for the same property under the same bylaw going to record and on record at the same time without acknowledging and addressing how those two approvals interact with one another. So it avoids multiple permits on record for the same property. It also, as I said, is really a way to frame the discussion and the analysis. What's the goal of the board's review of this project? I would submit it's to look at these two projects side by side as a comparison. We're not asking you to look at our project from scratch, and I would submit it doesn't make sense to do so. I think it makes sense to look at what has changed, what has not changed, and how the changes that are being proposed affect offsite impacts, both positively and negatively. So the ultimate question is, which of these two projects does the board prefer? And that's why we style this as a modification request. It doesn't have any impact on the legal standards or the procedures that you will follow. So let's look first at what has not changed. And that was addressed previously, but I'll review it quickly. First of all, we're not proposing this under a different bylaw. We're not coming in with an open space residential development or a marijuana facility. We're proceeding under the exact same section of the town zoning bylaws. And at the same time, we're looking at the same property. We haven't removed part of the property, we haven't added to it. It's the same exact property that's the subject of the prior special permit. As was mentioned earlier, the core project elements of the proposal are the same. Renovation and reuse of the mansion, again, in accordance with the intent of the Cottage Area Estates bylaw. A luxury hotel resort. A high-end restaurant, that's exactly the same number of seats. And a high-end spa, that's, for all intents and purposes, the same size, a touch smaller. Another way in which it's important for us, and we felt it was important to treat this as an amendment, is we didn't want to force the board to renegotiate and reimpose all of the commitments, mitigation and conditions that are part of that prior special permit. And there's a lot in there. So everything that's in there that isn't necessarily changing based upon the project modifications is still going to be a commitment we have to live up to. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. So what has changed? I think very significantly, we've eliminated the massive, very visible addition to the hotel that was going to contain the hotel rooms and the spa. We've reduced the number of hotel rooms and correspondingly added the resort residences. And also not part of the prior approval, and I think very significant, we've committed to preserving almost all of the historic accessory structures on the building. I'm not going to dig into the weeds here, but I wanted to point out that there's a lot of legal precedent for the notion that very significant changes to a project that is the subject of a special permit can be approved via a modification of the special permit. So for instance, in Huntington versus ZBA of Hadley, the appeals court said a substantive amendment which changes the result of an original deliberate decision and grants relief different from that originally granted requires a modification with all the same notice and hearing procedures that apply to the original special permit. And I'm not gonna go through all the other cases I've cited or the many others that I haven't here. I just wanted to show this isn't a new concept. And as I mentioned, it's specifically provided for in section 11 of the zoning act. Something I didn't put in here, and I just happened to notice, is it's also provided for in a different context, admittedly, in your zoning bylaw. I just happened to notice that in section 630.1, speaking of marijuana establishments, a special permit for a marijuana establishment for, say, a testing facility, and that the applicant decides they want to change it to a retail facility, does that require a new special permit application, quote unquote? No. It says a marijuana establishment that seeks to expand or alter its operations so as to come within a new class, i.e. testing facility to retail, shall obtain a modification to its special permit. And that's just consistent with the law, but it's relevant to note that it's not a concept that's foreign to the bylaw itself. It's also consistent with land use permitting generally. Again, I'm not going to get into the weeds here, but in the context of comprehensive permits under Chapter 40B, you can go from 10 townhouses to a 100-unit high-rise apartment building, and it requires what? A modification. It's called a substantial modification. Does it require a new application? No. It requires a modification that follows all the same procedural requirements. Similarly with subdivisions, a planning board can approve any type of modification, expansion, change to a subdivision through a modification under section 81W. And I just realized I have a typo here. It's not chapter 40A, it's chapter 41. Section 81W. So my apologies for that. So in conclusion, I think that the idea behind the phraseology of our application is simply to focus the board on what I would hope the board wants to be focused on, which is a comparison of these two projects. And I think that makes common sense. To focus on the new aspects of the plan, changes in design and massing, changes in landscaping and open space, changes in traffic and other potential impacts. And the bylaws criteria would be applied to these changes as opposed to reinventing the wheel on deciding, well, is this a great cottage area estate? Do we want a 60-seat restaurant? There's nothing to prevent you from doing so. But I guess the question is that an effective and efficient use of your time? And as I said earlier, it would avoid having multiple special permits on the record for the same property. And with that, I will turn it back over to Beth.
Our next team member is going to speak with you about one of my favorite unique aspects of this historic project. Rosetta Elkin is the landscape architecture expert for our team. She's a professor of landscape architecture at Pratt Institute, a research associate at the Arnold Arboretum at Harvard, and the principal of Practice Landscape. Her firm works on garden making, publishing, and horticultural research.
Okay, hey, thank you so much. I think I'm going to add some color to the conversation and turn this around and shift a little bit. Seems to be where I'm placed in talking about the plan itself.
Let the board see.
Yes, sure, whatever.
Can you guys see that?
So again, thank you for your patience and for hosting. I'm going to, so we're scrolling. Okay, that, we've seen that. Okay. So I'll provide a brief overview of the landscape and site planning. As mentioned in the introductory remarks, I study ecology, I study horticulture, and I do so to help steward historic landscapes. I'm a gardener, I'm a mother, and I love plants. I think it's worth mentioning because this is a real place you all recognize. And just coming out of the legal and regulatory environment from the first few slides, let's think about the place itself. It's a privilege for me to be part of this project, to support the heritage of Elm Court. This is a landscape treasure, an absolute gem in the history of design that deserves to be conserved in as much the same way as other important cultural assets that make Stockbridge so unique. Which is why, to me, this view is much more than just a lawn. Please let me explain. While I deeply appreciate the generous introduction, it's also worth noting that I'm an Olmsted scholar. What does that mean? Well, that my research is focused on the first landscape architect in American history, Frederick Law Olmsted. Olmsted was America's great park maker. He designed Central Park, the Capitol grounds, including the White House, proposed the entire Boston Emerald Necklace system, and considered open and public planted space in almost every city in North America. And guess what? Elm Court is an Olmstedian landscape, designed with open meadows, dense plantings, and sinuous paths, as you can tell, and might even be familiar with. Which is why the plan we revised is a significant improvement because it respects and conserves the historic landscape. And while there are even more reasons for this, I only have time to be brief, although I look forward to more discussion and Q&A, of course. For now, it's simply worth stating that the former plan did not involve a landscape architect. That was an oversight. It meant that the buildings were out of context, that there were higher retaining walls, that the scale was off, considering the height and maturity of trees, and most importantly, that green, open, public space was not a priority. Now, amended and improved, I hope you can all tell, from the gentle grading to the respect of existing trees and new planting design, that the revised plan is not only an improvement, but it safeguards the historic Olmstedian landscape. We studied his early drafts from the archives at Fairstead and discovered that there is one notable remnant at Elm Court from the original plan that remains unaffected after all of this time, and that is the large central open space. Working collaboratively, we all agreed that this essential feature must remain at the heart of the revised plan. Sorry, that little plan that you may not be able to see is an original drawing of Elm Court by Olmsted. The only difference is that rather than a mown lawn, as Olmsted envisioned it at the turn of the century, we envision a native meadow investing in biodiversity, providing habitat for pollinators and access for pedestrians, connecting residential life with nature. We achieve this by conserving all wetland resource areas and respecting the buffer zones, as you can see in A, closest to Lily Pond. We are conserving 40% of the site for passive recreation, including access to Lily Pond, providing walking trails, benches, and new boardwalks where necessary. In B, you can see how we limit and densify the potential development around a parkway road, a loop that is easy for entry and exit. An initial assessment of this area that I did with my team revealed that the existing canopy is not in good shape. It's not healthy since it shows signs of thinning, discoloration, and stunted growth, making it an ideal place to propose the development. Finally, in C, in the historic grounds and central meadow, they're preserved while thickening the planting along Old Stockbridge Road. Another way to look at the design is in section, a cut through the site from east to west. This shows how effectively the improved plan takes advantage of the physical slope. As you can see, all proposed development is concentrated along the new parkway in the center, and how the views from Old Stockbridge Road are concealed, mostly by the change in elevation or how the land rises and falls naturally. This is a view of how the road looks now, before, and the landscape and planting design we propose. A very subtle improvement. We're not looking to reinvent the wheel, as one of my colleagues already said, and I will repeat. We are looking to enhance the historic landscape. And in this case, the subtle improvement is a vale-like setting with thickets of native rhododendrons and azaleas, very common to the region, and access paths for the community to walk safely behind the restored stone wall. We've taken seriously this view, and I just want to reinforce that obscuring the parking is an absolute priority, not only because it's important for the neighborhood, but also because it resonates with homesteading principles. We are doing so with both plantings that we all know will take some time to fill in and grow, but also with a sloping hillside that will provide immediate concealment. A little zoom into that area here. That's a double slide, isn't it? Yeah, that's just the same slide twice. This is a little zoom into that area. The parking with people in it and lighting to give you a sense of how that hillside is designed to lessen the impacts for all species. Steve Mack, my colleague, will expand on the improved lighting design, but we are all working towards human comfort and integration into context. So I'd like to highlight the principles that drove the revised landscape and site planning, which I've mentioned before. They're listed here for you to glance over for reference. But in my last few minutes, and while I have your attention, and because I'm an Olmsted nerd and I like talking about landscape architecture, I can't resist highlighting the principles of Frederick Law Olmsted, again, the most revered landscape architect in American history, who advocated for public health by bringing people closer to nature using 3 principles. First, genius of place. That is really how he captured his ideas of preservation, very novel at the time, through uninterrupted views of context. Here, of course, appreciating the rolling hills of the Berkshire Mountains. Second, a unified composition is what he called it, ensuring that the design is merged with the architecture and the engineering, creating views from roads, rooms, and paths in ways that highlight the central uses while clustering movement. And finally, unified composition ensures that the design is merged, third is the orchestration of movement, meandering compositions and buffer zones to separate activities. So what this really means is just that there are places to walk and be active and drive, and they're separate. That's very important because we all know that different paces and speeds make outdoor life more safe. And as you can tell from the plan, we love trees. And we intend to plant many species, but most importantly, we can plant a diversity of elm trees, including some new resistant cultivars that we're working on at the Arnold Arboretum to restore the legacy of the name itself. So I hope I've conveyed to you that we've worked with landscape conservation and ecological restoration to preserve this incredible site history and future. We've worked closely with the architects and the engineers who you will hear from next to ensure gracefulness and resilience, which brings this landscape into the 21st century and back into the community. Thank you.
Our next team member, also a deep expert in the planning aspects and integrating the landscape with the structures, is David Hamilton. David is going to provide you background and strategy for the development project. He teaches courses in real estate and planning at Harvard's Graduate School of Design. He's led a number of innovative development projects and consults on economics of historic farms and estates and the preservation of agriculture and ecological restoration. And here you.
Thank you, Beth. And thank you, Rosetta, also for laying out some of the key issues. For those of you on board and anyone listening, it is not an accident that the design presentation was led by a landscape architect. What is a treasure about this place is this landscape, and it really centers what we're doing. As Beth said, I've worked in conservation development for a bit over 20 years. And the problem is often the same. historic assets, legacy landscapes, or what we call them, that don't have a current use without additional development. And yet we all worry about how to insert that development in a respectful way, not only to the historic asset, but to the public, to the view shed, and to the ecology. Here's what's being proposed from a tactical point of view. We propose to distribute the hotel to smaller dispersed units and residences, more at a residential scale. We want to preserve the wetlands, the most intact forest, which is in the lowlands, versus the fragmented tree line uphill that Rosetta referred to with invasive issues and standing dead. And the Lily Pond shoreline, totally conserved, usable for passive recreation. Throughout the design, we're trying to minimize the impact of roads, retaining walls, and other infrastructure, which need to be introduced to serve any new development, including the hospitality and the residential use. Throughout, as you see in the plan that Rosetta showed you, we want to center historic Elm Court and the landscape immediately around it amid views of that landscape, both internally and from Old Stockbridge Road for people who encounter this from that angle. We need to create a number of amenities, and we want them all to be walkable along recreation paths in an entirely walkable landscape defined by this Olmstedian geometry and sense of orchestration of movement. Finally, we want to screen and reduce in size elements of parking and structures in order to preserve the views that you see on the site today, or enhance them. So in the plan, which went by pretty quickly, there are actually 4 distinct areas of proposed development. I'm going to outline them, and I think you can see my cursor roughly. Up at the front, surrounding Elm Court, is what we call a historic manor park. The landscape character that is what Rosetta called the Vale. That's not V-E-I-L, that's V-A-L-E, a low broad valley, which you learn if you hang out with a landscape architect for a couple months. That's the historic part of what you see as Elm Court and all the associated open spaces. And we have a set of priorities for that, which is really about keeping it and restoring it to its grandeur. The second is what we call the Olmsted Lodges, which is along the north property line outside the Loop Road. And those elements there are the smaller sort of decomposed units of that larger hotel that we've broken apart into residential scale. And I'll show you what they look like in a second. Third is this kind of band that runs along the Loop Road at a lower elevation than the Vale and the Manor. We're talking running down to about 100 feet below, and connects the entire sort of belt around the property around this great meadow. So that's where residential and hotel development happens, is down at the lower elevation, reinforcing the tree line of that big open space. And the fourth is the south parcel, which is the area around the historic greenhouse, the stables, a couple of cottages, and the barn, the pole barn that is on the south property. Each of those has a distinct character, which I'm going to go through. So as I said, the point here at the Manor Park, the Vale, and what you see on the bottom left is the beginning of what we call Long Meadow, which is an Olmsted referring name for a place in Central Park. The idea here is that rather than having attachments, or these visible attachments, the historic Elm Court, the manor itself, is visually independent. You can approach it from all angles, and it sits in the landscape as it was originally conceived. Not originally the very first piece of it that was built, but as it stands. We retain also that historic curved entry. So the north entrance, which you come off of Old Stockbridge Road, there's a wonderful curved entry where you meander into the arrival court. That stays where it is, and in fact is reinforced with additional plantings to more closely follow the original Olmsted plan. Parking and service, as Rosetta showed you, have to be provided, and they're concealed both by landscape and by grade. And there are more details on these in the engineering submittal, of course. We want to add a pool. This is one of those amenities. a pool and associated deck. And the question of where to put it is a tough one, because once you visually made Elm Court visually independent, all sides of it are visible, with the exception of this tiny sneak below grade to get in the service access and staff parking. Rosetta's idea, and I think it's a wonderful one, is to extend a feature that's already there. It's called the sunken garden. It's a stepped down garden on the backside of the building, which then turns into the pool deck. So that pool deck is at least 20 feet below the lowest level of Elm Court. So that it would not be visible from above. The idea, and Rosetta showed you this image already, is that this is both the before and after image of this project. Not really, the plantings change, but we're enhancing the perimeter of what's there. And we accomplished that after image by pushing every element of the built structure and parking that is associated with it and other kind of infrastructure back and down the hill. So that you look at this thing as a public view shed from Old Stockbridge Road, and you see an open space very similar to what you see today with a lot more care. Elm Court is then surrounded by a meadow landscape, and that perimeter is enhanced to recover some of the damage that we've identified. The next area of interest is what we've called Olmsted Lodges. Essentially, these are the hotel rooms that have been unbundled from a large 4-story addition into these smaller residential scale structures. Each one is approximately the size of a home. They are separate from the manor. In fact, not just separate, but they are beyond the 200-foot limit that is provided in the bylaw. They're actually not even that close. The idea is that these are small buildings which are surrounded by the forest, and that they themselves are a landscape element. And I'll show you what they look like in a second. The idea of placement on the grade is that they tumble down, they cascade down this hillside, which falls away from the manor in such a way that they're not only not visible from Old Stockbridge Road, which is not even controversial, they're not even visible from the manor and the public spaces inside it, if you were to be standing in the restaurant. And that's what we want, is that these guests can come and enjoy, and they can walk to and from and enjoy the amenities and the public spaces and the wonderful public realm that is created of this long meadow, and not impair or even fundamentally change the character of the experience of being in Elm Court. You'll see that the parking is similarly dispersed. Rather than put the requisite number of spots for this number of rooms in a parking lot on a slope, what we've done is broken them out very carefully. Steve Mack did an absolutely amazing job at this, finding spots where you can put small parking lots in and among the buildings in the forest. From above, there's an architectural character that's applied to these, which is very modest. It probably would be surprising. With sloped shed roofs facing away from the manor, the appearance of the building from above, of the buildings from above, is really that of a 1-story building, and the size of the units is the size of a small house, visually. They also exist inside a matrix of a fast-growing forest, which is replacing a forest that largely has to be replaced for reasons of invasive and degradation of the existing material. The view is open to the hills beyond. If you were to look at the same thing from below, you see why we call it the glade. The idea is that this is a birch forest with a central stair and path through these sets of buildings, which again are at smaller volumes. They present themselves as small things in a forest. The buildings are considered as elements of a landscape that you meander up and through, and then you can cut in at grade and walk over to the manor and to various amenities like the pool, the trails, the open space. And those fast-growing birches and ground cover that Rosetta is going to expertly help us with create what we call the glade. As we move down the hill, an area we call the ravine is where we locate resort residences. And this is that belt around the road. The idea is that these homes are pushed down below the manor, enabling them to be essentially looked over from the level of the manor and from the level of Old Stockbridge Road. And yet, They can be very pleasant, in fact, wonderful places inside this forest, and they are all adjacent to this wonderful public realm of the Great Meadow, the Long Meadow. There are a couple of things that we're doing here. One is what a great song. One is the use of a simple loop road, and more or less keeping the grade at a constant grade so that we minimize the use of retaining walls and in fact of fill on the property as we put in this infrastructure, which is necessary. We also are sharing paired driveways, which limits the number of times we cut through any given slope. This design and the home locations minimize the profile from the manor. And I can say to you that these homes along this belt will be totally invisible from Old Stockbridge Road. There are other aspects of the traffic that Steve and Ken will get into in a little bit. This is the character of one of those houses down there, which you see on the screen. The idea is that these things sit below. Each house, as it's built by individual owners or by the resort, will have a relationship to this manor. And crucially, the owner of it will have a stake in what happens to that manor, and that is successful not only architecturally, but operationally. The value of their home is very much dependent on how great that meadow is and how terrific that hotel is and how beautifully that building is restored up the hill. This is the principle of conservation development. The idea is that you can walk out of these homes. You do not, generally speaking, hop in your Volvo and drive up to the manor. The idea is that you walk through these mown paths, which are very informal level, and then slightly more formal, and then eventually formal paths up to that central building. The last one is a little unusual, and that is the south parcel on the extreme south side. This was the home of the building's farm operations for many years and greenhouse. And it's unusual in a couple of ways. One is that Jonathan referred to I think the announcement to the meeting referred to there's an existing permit that has to be a non-conforming use that has to be adjusted. That's this building down here, which we call the service barn. At the very bottom right, there's an existing barn, which I'll show you, and we want to build within the footprint of that, but set it back further from the property line. Within this area, that barn, the idea of that barn is that it would host management for the property and quiet work areas. And I'll show you what it looks like in a second. The idea is that we retain the stables and cottages that you see up above them, the 3 white boxes. And then we have a big question, which is what to do with the greenhouse, which we know is at least partially damaged and it requires additional evaluation. So this is that barn. Oh, in the upper left, you see the building, which we have a communication with the town building official indicating that that is likely condemnable in its current state. It's unsafe, but it performs an important function. It's actually a screen for the neighbor on that side of everything that happens on this property. It's a place to store equipment, which is non-trivial part of managing a large property, especially at the high level we expect to manage it. So our strategy here is to reduce the nonconformity by taking the footprint of the original building and working entirely within it in terms of the size of the building gets smaller. We want to also improve the setback so it's completely non-conforming as it exists now. It's right up against the property line. We want to move it forward. I think it's 8 or 9 feet. Steve can make that more precise. And the third thing that it does is it still maintains the screen of parking, which we need to have additional off-site parking over there. We do not want to have a massive parking lot next to Open Court. What we want to do is have a right-sized parking area and a service area, and then allow, when there are bigger things that can happen on this property, additional parking can happen on the south parcel and people can walk the see above wonderfully walkable Olmstedian landscape to get to the event. The idea is that this is something that resembles a modest agrarian farm. The last and most complex piece that I only will show you our intentions with is the greenhouse. This is it on the top left. We know for a fact that the greenhouse wings are largely already deteriorated and possibly not even savable in terms of the masonry. The central building is another question that we think that we need real professional advice to advise us on. But I wanted to show you what our attitude toward it is, which is that this is just another really special piece of this place with a great history and actually a wonderful building in and of itself if it were in better shape. Our idea is to basically remove, well, first of all, do a great evaluation of this thing where we really understand what we can and can't do. Immediately remove any unsafe elements, and then where we can stabilize what's in place or reuse some of the elements of it in a new building. The idea is that architecturally, we can use the existing orientation of these greenhouse wings to inform what we do in the follow-up, which is primarily to house wellness uses broadly defined, which are the equivalent of the spa, 16,000 square feet that used to be attached to the building. So we think that this would be the location of spa and wellness activity, and you would walk across the property to and fro from the hotel and resort. So in summary, the idea is that we're maintaining this count of total units, but distributing the large hotel mass to the residential scale. And that residential scale persists both in the hotel units and in what we call resort residences. We privilege preserving the views of the restored manor and the landscape from Old Stockbridge Road at several points, but particularly the views that you've seen in the entry. All of the structures that we are proposing that are new are downhill and respectful to the historic Elm Court and its grounds. And the amenities and parking are both broken up in a way that we can, in the best way that we can think of, to provide smaller units that fit more into this landscape, both in plan and in section and grade, within the walkable landscape that we're creating. And we think that breaking it up not only reduces visual impacts, but it also reduces pressure on traffic, lighting, every other aspect of life with these things. And again, just to point your attention to it, the dark green on that property means that if we can constrain development at a higher density in this little belt, we can keep all development out of both the uphill and downhill areas of this property. The great long meadow, the historic core, and the conservation area below. And that concludes my time today. Thank you.
Thank you for your patience. We have a few more experts to make our presentation. I did want to clarify one point. The barn I thought was in fact condemned.
It was. It has been.
Not just theoretically.
Correct.
But in fact, okay, just clarifying that, because that's why we're here. Okay. Our next team member is Pam Sandler. It's my pleasure to introduce Pam, who is the principal of Pamela Sandler Architect LLC. She's been practicing locally for more than 40 years, and one of her greatest passions is historic preservation. For the past 15 years, Pam has been dedicated to working on the Elm Court project, helping to restore and reimagine this important architectural resource.
Thank you. Good evening. My passion for this work began when I was about 10 years old. I grew up in a very small town, and all of a sudden, all the beautiful buildings along the Hudson River kept on coming down, and they kept on going down and until they got to like Main Street, but they were all gone. I didn't understand what was going on at all. It didn't make any sense to me. But I realized it was where I wanted to focus on. In architecture school, I continued on that path, focusing on historic preservation. I did my thesis along the Hudson River. I have been on the Stockbridge Historic Preservation Stockbridge Historic Preservation Commission for over 20 years. I most recently completed a major. I'm supposed to do my first slide. I'm terribly sorry about that, and it doesn't work.
The down arrow.
The down arrow, you just poke it a couple of minutes.
I'm going to do it for you.
I'm trying, President.
Yeah.
You can keep talking.
Here we go.
Thank you. Thanks.
Oh, you got
Thank you very much. Okay. And I most recently, completed, adaptive reuse of the old Stockbridge Town Hall. Boy, I waited my whole life for a project like that. And it's the Berkshire Waldorf High School. It is such a success. I think my happiest thing is seeing students running around in there and me saving those 12-foot windows, which the contractor kept on saying, let's just get rid of those. I was known as threatening people to chain myself to the building if stuff wasn't done right. Yes, I have worked on this project for 15 years, with 2 different developers. I feel this is the best plan for Elm Court. It is thoughtful, sensitive, and has the least environmental impact. I'd like to speak about Elm Court, and specifically, it is one of the most important treasures in our community. There you go. Okay. It was designed by Peabody and Stearns, pioneers of the shingle style. Elm Court is an extraordinary example of their work. It is the largest shingle style house in the United States. Its craftsmanship, its details, and its place in the history of the Berkshires make it irreplaceable. This is simply not another large historic house. It is the defining piece of our town's cultural and architectural identity. These are some elevations of Elm Court, which basically have looked the same for the last 140 years. So you will see. I have the floor plans also, which I'm gonna go through. Elm Court is deeply significant asset to the town of Stockbridge. The restoration and revitalization plan focused on giving the manor house a sustainable new life while respecting every bit of its historic character. It will include 26 guest rooms, 6 on the first floor and 20 on the second. The public spaces that define the building, the reception area, dining room, ballroom, music room, and conservatory will remain central to the overall experience. The bachelor's wing will be adapted to provide 7 of those rooms that we're talking about. I want to show you something right here. This is in the bachelor's wing, and it still exists exactly like that. It has not been renovated at all. The entire bachelor's wing is in total disrepair. 15 years ago, my first task was to make it so my team could go in and measure the building because it wasn't safe even to walk in there and basically crib it up in the basement area. So anyway. We will upgrade in the main building, mechanical, structural, plumbing, and we'll put in fire suppression systems because there aren't any right now. All this work will be done with the lightest possible touch, fully compatible with the historic materials and appearance of Elm Court, and fully compliant with the Massachusetts State Building Code. I want to emphasize the urgency of this work. And again, I'll probably go back to the stat slides here. We have a real example in this town, and that's the Sisto School. If any of you were at all their presentations, all is left is a facade to keep. The building is gone. We can't let that happen here. Never again. Elm Court is far too important to risk a similar fate. Once a building like this begins to fail, the deterioration accelerates and the window to save it narrows. It's so important that we act now. This project represents a rare opportunity to preserve one of our greatest architectural treasures in this country and locally. We have the chance not only to save Elm Court, but to restore it, adapt it, and ensure that it remains a source of pride for our community for future generations. I respectfully ask you for your support so we can move forward, so that Elm Court becomes a success story of preservation and renewal rather than another cautionary tale. Thank you.
Next is Steve Mack. Steve is president and principal engineer at Foresight Land Services with over 30 years of experience in civil engineering and project management. Steve has managed and designed a wide range of engineering projects, including projects that involve in-depth adaptive reuse of historical assets, similar to Elm Court. He is well known to you all, and here he is.
Good evening. It's nice to see everyone. So again, Steve Mack from Foresight. And you've heard tonight all about the careful planning and design of this project. Making homage to history, the property itself, preserving wetlands and open space. And I will get down a little bit more nuts and bolts, which is my realm, and talk about how does this project fit with the existing special permit approval with respect to municipal impacts, and how does it compare? And that includes items like site access and circulation, deliveries, parking, infrastructure, wetlands protection, stormwater and lighting. So currently, the existing special permit approved a project with one main entrance, which was located at the north. That's existing, has the gates now, focusing all of the hotel addition and manor house use into that one spot. So this project is proposing to sort of bifurcate the entrances. We're going to reuse and improve the north entrance, which will be for the manor house and the lodge facility. And then we're going to improve the southerly entrance for the residential use. So sort of dividing those uses. And then David talked about the loop road, which will be constructed. That loop road will be for emergency access only. It's gated. We've talked to the fire department about installing a gate between the lodges and the residences. So it won't be traffic circulating all through the sites. Additionally, the existing special permit on the plans did not have a designated delivery area or dumpster area or whatnot. We're proposing a new delivery area to the north of the manor house, which I think David mentioned, which will control deliveries, and then fenced in garbage refuse areas. So just, everybody's seen this already several times, but the northerly entrance is here. So this entrance will serve now the lodge facility and the manor house. And then the southerly entrance, which is existing, will be improved, and that will be primarily for the residential use and emergency access, as I noted. And then over here, I don't know if you can see the cursor or not, but to the left of the screen is where the gated access will be for fire truck access. The proposed road is about 3,500 feet long. It'll be 22 feet wide with 1 foot gravel shoulders, so suitable for emergency purposes. Next thing is parking. The existing special permit approved 160 parking spaces in 2 parking lots. There was one large parking lot to the south of the property, right along the southerly border, and then parking up near the hotel addition and the existing manor house that supplemented the large parking lot. We're proposing to decentralize the parking, which was discussed. So we're proposing 168 spaces in 6 locations, trying to break up the sort of parking lot effect that you can picture with one parking lot. And then we are including 50 overflow parking spaces for events and whatnot, which I can just go through that here. You've seen this. To the left is the lodge parking, which will have individual spaces for each lodge unit. And then we have the service entrance here, and that has the employee parking located on it. And then the manor house parking, which has been carefully placed, as Rosetta said, with the berm and planting and landscaping, so it's set well below any visibility from any roads. And then on the left, the residential uses will have a typical residential parking. It'll be garage parking and then a driveway for each residence, and the overflow parking, which is located to the south, which is right here. As far as wetlands protection and scenic mountains, the existing approved special permit had no impacts to areas subject to the Wetlands Protection Act. And it was within the Scenic Mountains Act. And it had that large 4-story building that we've talked about in the Scenic Mountains Act. The Scenic Mountains Act starts at Old Stockbridge Road and contains 1,500 feet from Old Stockbridge Road west. So the entire site that you can develop is within the Scenic Mountains Act. So the proposal is the same for wetlands. There's no areas subject to the Mass Wetlands Protection Act being touched or worked in. And we're reducing significantly the impacts to scenic mountains by doing residentially scaled buildings. We no longer have the large building. Everything is less than 35 feet, conforming to the zoning bylaws, 35 feet without an exception to go higher. So everything is lower, residentially scaled. Water and sewer, the existing approval included so the existing property has on-site septic system, sewage disposal, and municipal water, which goes to Lennox along Old Stockbridge Road. They agreed, the previous project agreed to improve the infrastructure on Old Stockbridge Road to provide adequate water and sewer for this property and abandon the on-site septic system. This project will do the same thing. We've sat down with the town of Lennox. We've talked to them several times. We've come to an agreement in terms of what's needed to be done on Old Stockbridge Road. Their systems, their treatment plants can handle the water and sewer uses of this project. So the additional benefit to Old Stockbridge Road is they'll have improved fire protection because the water mains on Old Stockbridge Road are not great, and additional access to sewer connection. As far as stormwater management, the existing project was designed to meet mass stormwater regulations, which are very strict in terms of quantity, volume, and treatment of runoff. This project also includes conformance with mass stormwater regulations. We have a series of rain gardens and bioinfiltration and underground infiltration to meet that requirement. And actually, we did design it in my civil engineering mind to meet Rosetta's, what's it called, the links of Olmsted. Yeah, which I had fun doing that.
It was fun.
Site lighting, the project that was approved has 18-foot tall site lighting poles, which rings the entire project. It starts at the northerly gated entrance and goes all the way around the property along the existing road, which have been improved, to the southerly entrance, as well as 18-foot tall light poles in the parking lots themselves. So it was quite a commercial lighting system that's on the books. We're proposing, and Rosetta showed that nice picture of really wayfinding lighting. So it would be low bollard lighting, really focused on the public spaces only. So parking lots, accessible pathways, that type of thing. So this is just a little semi hard to read plan, but at each little black arrow is sort of the parking lot areas, the walkways, the lodge buildings that will have these low bollards that will be downward directed, house side shielded, night sky compliant, so significantly better than what was previously approved, the lighting system. So this, I'm not going to go through this whole slide, but this sort of is just a net comparison between previous approval and what's being proposed in front of you now. So in all cases that I went through, there's no increase in any municipal impact. And in many cases, there's a decrease. We're significantly decreasing impacts to scenic views, significantly improving the lighting system from an impact point of view, et cetera. So I'm happy to answer more questions later, but that's the presentation.
Thank you. Our next expert is Ken Cram. Ken is a registered professional traffic engineer in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. He works as Director of Traffic Engineering for Fuss & O'Neill and has over 40 years of experience conducting traffic impact studies for development of all types and sizes throughout New England. Additionally, Ken is an active member of the Institute of Transportation Engineering, ITE, an active contributor to the ITE Trip Generation Manual, and has been an industry leader in developing Massachusetts traffic impact assessment guidelines.
Thank you, Beth. Ken Graham from Fuss & O'Neill, and I must correct Beth. It was not 4 years, it's 40 years.
I thought you said 40.
Sound
Okay,
like-
we'll say it again. 40.
Thank you.
But you'd have learned so much in 4.
I got this right here in 4. Okay, good evening. Fuss & O'Neill has been involved in this project again since 2012. We did the original traffic study for the original proposal, and now we're back again. We redid the traffic study in its entirety, all new traffic count data. We followed the state's guidelines for the preparation of traffic impact assessments. We looked at 3 analysis years, 2032, 2035, and 2040, which are requirements under the local zoning ordinances. And we compared this project to the prior project. And based on the traffic generation for the project, during the morning peak hour, we're going to generate only 3 additional trips during the weekday morning peak hour. And there will be fewer trips during the weekday evening and the Saturday peak hours. The study area intersections, we looked at 8 intersections, including the 2 site driveways. There is a very negligible increase in delay, queue lengths, and volume to capacity ratios as resulting from the project. And the project generated traffic is not substantial enough to warrant any improvements to any of the study area intersections we looked at. And we looked at safety, particularly sight lines at the site driveway intersections with Old Stockbridge Road. And they were found to exceed the recommended minimum values for safe and efficient operation. Safety being one of our key issues as traffic engineers. So this slide here summarizes when our counts were done. We did them in July of 2025 over roughly a 4 to 5 day period. These counts were looked at for seasonal adjustment, and based on data from Mass DOT seasonal adjustments, July represents the peak month for this area in Stockbridge. We looked at the safety analysis. We analyzed the available crash data that was available at the time that was imported through Mass DOT's impact website, which summarizes all the crash data for 2017 through 2021. We investigated all the types and severities, and we found that there was no significant crash history at any of the study area intersections. We looked at level of service for existing no build, and then again, the 3 horizon year scenarios. And again, we found no significant degradation in the level of service. By comparison, we have the original hotel for proposal, which was 112 rooms. And this slide just summarizes what the traffic generation was that we used back in the final report for 2014, which had 41 trips in the morning peak hour. That's the total of number of cars coming in and out. So there were 30 entering and 11 for a total of 41 trips, 55 trips in the weekday evening peak hour, and 138 trips in the Saturday peak hour. Current proposal has gone down in the number of hotel rooms to 74 rooms, but there's going to be 38 residential homes. 40% of those we expect to be recreational homes. And we use the data from the latest edition of the Trip Generation Manual, which just came out in August of this year, 2025. And it's projected for 44 trips during the morning peak hour, 54 in the weekday evening peak hour, and 52 trips in the Saturday peak hour. And the next slide, just simply a comparison of the before and after. And this is where, as I said earlier, we're going to have 3 additional trips during the morning peak hour, 1 less trip during the weekday evening peak hour, and 86 fewer trips during the Saturday peak hour. The weekday evening, morning, they're virtually the same as we had analyzed back in 2014. But the big decrease comes on the Saturday peak hour, and that's attributable to the significant reduction in the number of rooms. In terms of, Steve spoke on this, our site driveways are exactly in the same location. And as I said earlier, we went out and we assessed site distances, and they are going to be more than sufficient based on guidelines for safe access. So in summary, the level of service, which is how we review and assess intersections, is generally maintained between no build and build conditions. We have good levels of service everywhere. There are minor increases in the calculated delay at the intersections, 2 seconds at most. And the vehicle queues, there are not substantial at all. At most, there was 1 vehicle length increase at one of the intersections. Again, the sight lines are at the site driveways are safe. There's no substantial crash history. And we stand by the original recommendation that we have stop lines and stop signs at our site driveway. And that concludes our brief summary of the traffic study.
And we are back to Rick and Linda, or do you want me?
Just Rick.
Just Rick.
Just Rick.
Just Mr.
Did you want to say anything? First, forgive me for having about half my normal voice. You folks have been incredibly patient.
Yeah, I do think.
A very long presentation. I've been coming to the Stockbridge and the Berkshires, even though I'm from Texas. My mother's been coming up here for most of my life. And it's a real privilege to be part of this. Gosh, I sound worse and worse. I want to emphasize what the benefits are to Stockbridge. First, a successful completion of our plans here will add very significantly to the tax base, between $2.6 million and $3.7 million each and every year. We'll be adding 85 to 105 permanent direct jobs, plus indirect hospitality positions. We will have a local spending uplift through, this is the spending associated with the people who come to town to visit the resort and the people who live in the home sites, of $2.2 to $2.3 million annually. And we will be contributing $1.7 million to affordable housing. But what are the costs to Stockbridge? There should be little, if any, impact on the schools. This is because our target market is older couples and empty nesters. The additional burdens on police and fire protection are more than adequately covered by additional taxes. And as you've just seen, the traffic counts are lower than the original approved project. We are really proud of this plan. We spent 3 years getting to this point. I can't tell you how proud I am of the team we've assembled. I've taught for 45 years, first at USC and the last 27 years at Harvard. I will confess, I've dragged David Hamilton in here. He's my co-author on the ULI book called Professional Real Estate Development, and my successor at Harvard in teaching the real estate finance classes. Before I get into my final remarks, let me just say that this is a hard deal to make work economically. Frankly, what makes it work now, where it really didn't work with Rivasta, is through the addition of 38 home sites for the conversion of the hotel rooms to the residences. We think our plan with a restored Elm Court operating at a modest scale with a mix of residential and hospitality uses generates substantial tax revenues and year-round economic activity. You see now this includes property taxes, lodging revenue, employment opportunities, and indirect spending that supports local businesses. For dollars that support our schools, emergency services, public works, and long-term financial health of the town. We believe very strongly in this plan. I should mention that the project adds important infrastructure, professional stormwater controls, engineered traffic flow, environmental protections that simply don't exist today. The town gains a historic landmark, a stabilized tax base. It provides additional affordable housing, and it was a project that respects the rural character that Stockbridge wants to preserve. As an urban planner, I just want to emphasize the importance of clustering the housing as we have here. And the home sites are effectively 2-acre sites if we were just a subdivide a conventional plot. But by clustering it, we're able to preserve 2/3 of the property in the wetlands and the historic landscape. So we do believe very strongly in this. We believe in its compatibility with the existing special permit and its alignment with the community's long-term interests. And we are committed, personally and financially, to ensuring that Elm Court becomes an asset for the town, not a liability hidden behind gates. Thank you very much for hearing us.
Since you're not, you sound gruffy, I'm gonna have Ray Ranta, who runs our construction.
Yeah, our closer. Ray Ranta is 44 years in building industry, and he has run his own companies, both residential and commercial, and also had 10 years in education field. And he is the construction management consultant. Our team.
Thank you. I'm not going to talk about construction. I will answer any questions, but I'm here because one of our team could not attend, and he's an important part of this organization. And he wrote a letter, and if that's all right with the board, if I could read that into the record.
Why don't you talk about who he is first?
I'm getting there. His name is John Cecil. Sometimes he goes by Jack Cecil. And he's a member of the Vanderbilt family. He actually is George W. Vanderbilt's great-grandson. And he runs the Biltmore down in North Carolina. To the members of the Stockbridge Selectboard, my name is John Cecil. For over 4 generations, my extended family has been entrusted with the preservation of some of this country's most significant historic estates, including Biltmore, Elm Court, and Shelburne. I do not lend my name lightly to projects involving heritage landscapes, and I certainly do not personally invest in them unless I am convinced the stewardship is responsible, technically sound, and rooted in respect for place. Elm Court achieves and exceeds those standards. I have spent my life immersed in Olmstedian landscape principles, studying them at Fairstead, applying them professionally, and safeguarding them as a personal obligation. When I walk the grounds of Elm Court, I see exactly what Frederick Law Olmsted and the Olmsted brothers intended, a landscape designed for harmony, balance, and continuity with the surrounding environment. That vision has been compromised over time. Without decisive action, it will continue to erode to the detriment of all. This project is the first serious, well-structured effort in decades to reverse that trend. I am supporting this plan because it does the hard, unglamorous work that real preservation requires. It restores the manor house properly, comprehensively, and in accordance with historic standards. It revives the Olmsted Brothers landscape, not as a token gesture, but as a disciplined, long-term ecological commitment. It reduces impacts below those already approved. Less traffic, less intensity, and less disruption. It preserves the majority of the estate as open space, honoring both the spirit and the letter of the cottage era estate bylaw. Most importantly, I personally support this project because the alternative is unacceptable. Without intervention, Elm Court will not remain as it is. It will continue to deteriorate piece by piece until the town loses one of its most culturally important assets. I've seen this happen to other historic estates across the country. And once that decline takes hold of it, it rarely reverses. The professional team and investors behind this proposal understand the responsibility of stewardship. We have taken on the financial, logistical, and technical burden of restoring a property most developers would walk away from. Our commitment is real, our plan is sound, and the benefits to the town, to the region, and to the cultural legacy of the Berkshires are significant. I encourage the Select Board to support this amended plan. It upholds the integrity of existing approvals, aligns with the cottage era estate bylaw, and represents the best, perhaps only, opportunity for Elm Court to be restored in a manner worthy of its history. Respectfully, John Sessom. Thank you.
So this concludes our team presentation. I hope you recognize that the team consists of many local experts and national experts, and we're all here tonight ready to answer your questions.
Thank you. And thank you for your very comprehensive presentation. So I guess we'll start with board discussion and questions. Georgia, do you have any?
No, I just want to make a statement if I may.
Go ahead.
As we consider this application, we should be aware that the area around Lily Pond is of significant importance to the Stockbridge Munsee tribe. We may want to consider an archaeological assessment of that area. That's just a thought I have.
Chuck?
So you're taking 38 units out of the hotel. Are they all residential units or are they some, just rooms off site and then houses or
38 to fit for 38.
38?
Yes.
Both?
And
Are they-
shockingly, the houses have less traffic than they.
Yeah, no, but are they all residential houses or? Okay. How much smaller does it make the addition on the, does that change the size of the addition on the building?
No building.
No addition.
No addition.
No addition
Oh, okay.
at
No
all.
cruise ship.
That's the key difference.
No, that's all I got. I was just,
Preserve the manor house as it is.
Is the deck going to be connected to for the pool?
There's a terrace.
So it's not connected to the building whatsoever. It would be adjacent to the sunken garden behind that. So it would be to the west.
Okay.
Sunken Garden steps down here and turns into the terrace so that it follows the grade.
Right. Okay.
So you can't see the pool from the manor because it's like this. It's lower elevation.
That's all I have for now.
It's hard to see that. Yeah, it's hard to see.
And clarification on the residences, are they privately owned or owned by the
So
hotel?
it's going to be a condominium.
Okay,
And so,
In use only. And they're not attached condominiums.
no, I think they understand that we have several like this in the Berkshires, right, Cranwell? A
Okay.
house can be a unit. In a
okay,
So some of the and correct me if I get this wrong, the houses could be offered for sale to private individuals, but they'll be affiliated with the
okay,
resort, and or the resort itself can develop that, build them and keep them as part of the resort.
and the driveway, the emergency driveway, is it paved or unpaved?
Will be hard surface, we think chip seal right now.
And the loop around, is it paved or unpaved? Isn't there like a driveway around?
I mean, I'm sorry, this loop road.
You have an emergency road and then you have a
That's-
loop around.
That is the loop road, and then
That
the
is-
other loops are walking paths.
Okay,
What Steve was referring to as emergency, what he's clarifying is that this
this
road,
one's gonna be gated.
this road is continuous, right? It's the same road that runs all the way around and it serves all of the resort residences and the lodges. But the idea is that in order to disperse the traffic to two locations instead of one, which is the fundamental, which is part of the assumption of the ITE calculation that Ken told you about, there's a lockout here like a Knox box. And so we anticipate that the users on the resort residence side will be coming in through this entrance,
Okay,
and the users for the resort, the restaurant, and for the lodge associated with that resort will be coming in through this side. So they segregate the traffic. For safety reasons, we want it to connect all the way through, but the idea is that there's a lockbox on it.
okay. Georgia, did you have anything else?
No, I'm just contemplating everything else. I have to think about everything that was presented tonight.
All right, so at this time, I will open up to 2-minute public comment. I don't know everyone's name tonight, so you'll have to just bear with me. I will call on each one of you and then the Zoom boxes. We would like your name and we would prefer you to give an address, but if you feel terribly uncomfortable, we'll accept that. So I guess I'll start with the room. If you'd raise your hand, I will call on you and you have 2 minutes per share. The man in the back.
Hello, I'm Charles Flint.
Oh, you can come on up
Yeah,
here.
come up, sir.
I'm sorry,
Yeah, they can't see you on TV back there.
maybe you can bring it to me. I'm Charles Flint. I've lived in Lennox 35 years. I'm on Stockbridge Road. We lived on the east side for 25 years and then, for 10 years and 25 years on the west side, and our back property abuts to Stockbridge. And I inherited Linda through Ann Fitzpatrick. I was very involved with her with Blantyre and then Linda with Blantyre. And I'm a big supporter of what she's doing. I'm very excited. I learned a lot here tonight. I think this is a very exciting project. It's a clean project. I like the fact that it's scaled down. I was supportive of it before, but more so now. So with all that, I'm also on the historical site. I'm the president. I've been researching Old Stockbridge Road, and it's one of the oldest roads in Lennox.
Oh.
And it was originally a Native Indian path, and before that, animal path. And so it was the old county road before it became Route 7, then it became 7A, and it became Old Stockbridge Road. So it's an old post road. And so anyway, actually, Jonathan Hinsdale and Sarah Hinsdale settled in 1750 on our street.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room that would like to speak? The man in the back?
Hi, my name is Michael Lucia. I live at 261 Old Stockbridge Road in Lenox. And I believe the Stockbridge Planning Board was planning on discussing this on December 2nd. And wasn't able to because the meeting was canceled due to the weather. And also there was talk about the Historical Commission and the Public Health talking about this. The planning board is taking this up again on December 16th. So I would like to respectfully suggest that this board have a motion to pause this, a vote on this until the planning board can meet and advise the select board. And I also want to mention that the attorney here, Silverstein, had said that this amended permit that neighbors would be notified as if it were a new permit, which I'm in a butter. I wasn't notified by mail of this meeting, and I don't believe any of the direct butters were notified as if it were a new permit. So postponing this meeting would allow them to notify the direct butters as if it were a new permit, like you mentioned, or at least for us to get the word around so that direct butters can have their concerns heard. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience tonight? And the woman in the vest. Thank you.
Catherine Newey, 16 West Stockbridge Road, just west of the Botanical Gardens. 30-year resident, very concerned about local wildlife and needs of the Native Americans. So my question is, this chip surface on the loop, and then the metal roofing, and then the parking lots, are they also the chip surface as well? How are the parking lots paved?
Asphalt.
Oh, can you?
They are asphalt. So having seen the runoff in many different situations working with Conservation Commission here in Stockbridge, my concern is just that we could have some more information about the actual studies of the storm runoff. And I see the landscape architect shaking her head too along those lines, because there just are a lot of concerns about the actual true impact and whether the water's being conserved, in a potable fashion and other things of that sort. But it sounds like we're working in that direction.
I don't think I'm allowed to answer, but yeah.
Okay,
I'm not.
thank you. So, those were my main questions. I appreciate that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Seeing none, I will start with the Zoom board and we'll try to go in order. And it looks like Jeff, it's tiny. Jeff?
Yep.
You may speak.
Hi, it looks like my video is not enabled, but I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
This is Jeff Bendramer. I'm the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for the Stockbridge Muncie community. And probably a lot of you there probably have met me or know me over the years. I just wanted to, first of all, say thank you, the select person who spoke up about an archaeological survey. I, as a historic preservation professional, I'm gratified by the attention that's being given to this historic property. But I just want to mention that the standing structures and landscaping are not the only historic properties, that we're talking about. So we also have early Stockbridge history is Mohican history, and we would love to see some thought put into identifying archaeological, historic, cultural resources on the property, obviously before development occurs. So thank you very much. I appreciate your allowing me to speak. I'm not a resident of Stockbridge, but our historic preservation officer is located at 86 Spring Street in Williamstown. Thank you again.
Thank you. It looks like Kate Fletcher, you may speak.
Thank you, Jamie. My name is Kate Fletcher. I am Chair of the Stockbridge Planning Board. We did indeed meet on November 18th to discuss the first question, the important question at this point, as to whether this request should be considered as an amendment to the 2014 special permit. The planning board wasn't able to hold our meeting Tuesday evening due to the weather, but we have rescheduled for December 16th. The agenda is posted along with the packet materials, and the planning board will discuss this and continue to discuss this. And I assume we'll have a vote. And I know a number of people on the number of board members expressed a desire to review the 2014 request first. And so I expect that we will be able to make a recommendation after we meet on the December 16th. I know some of the comments made at the November 18th meeting had to do with the details of this new plan and having a site visit so that we can fully understand the details. That is what matters. This is a huge project, as the presenters have indicated, and the details will be very important. So that is where the planning board is at this early stage of the game. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. And it looks like Steve or Stephen. Sean?
Green, Stephen.
Sorry that it's really small.
That's okay. Hi, my name is Stephen Green. I live on Old Stockbridge Road. The front of my property is in Lenox. The back of my property is in Stockbridge. I have some concerns about the status of where we are now with proceeding as an amendment. I believe that your bylaws say that once there's a special permit issued, if there's a 2-year lapse and nothing has been acted on that special permit, it is deemed abandoned. And there's been no showing made that there should be renewal of that old special permit that's 11 years old. And since 2014, there have been studies done in Stockbridge about this estate bylaw and whether it's appropriate. There's a lot of dissension in town about the use of this section, and there may have been revisions to it since the original approval. So I would encourage the board to speak with their counsel to see if it's appropriate to proceed with this as an amended application. There must be a reason that the applicant has decided to proceed as an amendment and not as a new application. Counsel here tonight indicated that it is, there was no clear reason, but there must be a legal reason. And I suspect, I'm not an attorney licensed in Massachusetts, but I expect that some of the appeal rights of the community may be waived if you deem this as a granted special permit, and this is just an amendment to that. So I think it's actually a new application should be considered. It might mean redoing everything that's been done tonight, but I think you got to follow the law and your own bylaws and deem the original permit abandoned.
Gentle time, and thank you for your comments.
I do have one more question, and that is just with regard.
Gentle time, 2 minutes are up. So sorry.
Well, I'm sorry that the presenter had an hour and a half and I only get 2 minutes, but thank you.
Anyone else in the Zoom boxes that would like to speak? Seeing none. Wait. Patrick White. Patrick?
Can you hear us?
All right, moving on.
He's on mute.
Yeah, does he know he's on mute?
All right.
Unmute him.
Invite him to unmute. You can invite him to unmute. You say, hey.
Sorry about that. It was my phone was misactivating. I think that first of all, I wanted to thank the applicant for spending so much time not only on the project, but on reaching out to the town over the course of their conceptualization of this project. Michael and I had a chance to meet, what was that, Michael, like over 2 years ago with the applicant to give feedback. When Chuck was the chair, he had assigned me to that role. And so that's one point I'll make. And then the other point I would like to make is just, I think that this is a less impactful project than the one that is already permitted. And I suspect that one of the other of these will be built. And I believe that this one is significantly preferable. And I just wanted to emphasize that, the voters just approved a project where the capital cost of the town for the new high school is going to be $2 million. We don't know yet what the operational impact of that new school is going to be on the town. I applaud the board's efforts, and Chuck, you're doing a great job, and Michael, you're doing a great job. The whole board's doing a great job on reimagining ambulance and fire. I now serve as the CFO of the Southern Berkshire Ambulance Company, and I know you guys are absolutely on the right track. And I want to congratulate for that, but let's recognize that that comes with a significant price tag itself, well over $1 million to the town. And so I think that we need to balance how we view the town and how we keep the town affordable for the middle class and for homeowners who pay the taxes here. The Western Mass Housing Study suggested that 18%, 1 out of 5 of our homeowners are severely cost burdened with their home ownership costs. And I think we have to avoid the pitfalls of some surrounding towns where that middle class is being eroded because simply the cost of government doesn't keep up with the ability for those types of homeowners to afford their taxes. So I thank the board for taking a look at this and would hope for a speedy approval of this application.
Gentle
Thanks, Jamie.
time, Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick.
And in the, seeing no more hands on the Zoom boxes.
I just wanted to say there was a comment by Mary Burley that was a question. So can you look at the comment boxes?
No.
Or
We don't
use the
person has to
comments.
speak. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And anyone that didn't speak in the audience?
Tom Stokes.
Yep, I will. Anyone from the audience that didn't have a chance? Okay. Tom Stokes?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes. Yep.
Yes, I'd like to, if possible, yield my 2 minutes to Mr. Green, who did not get to ask his question, which I thought was an important one.
We're not going to do that tonight. Thank you, Tom, though. That was very generous. Did you have anything you'd like to say?
No, I just think that that was a valid point that everybody's made valid points, but I thought his was also valid that given that he's lives nearby and had a question to ask, I think you should entertain that question.
Anyone else that would like to?
Stephen Green is a resident of Lenox and Stockbridge, so maybe she should get an extra 2 minutes because for his residency in Lenox and residency in Stockbridge.
Sorry, no, I'm not playing Wheel of Fortune. Sorry.
We're gonna have more meetings.
We are going to have more meetings, and you can always send in email comments or letters, and we will put them into the record. Anyone else? Seeing none. Does the board have any other questions, comments? Georgia?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Jamie.
Okay, so at this point, we did that. So we will refer this to a peer review with Beals and Beals. We have to make a motion and vote. So if we have a
I'll
motion
make a motion, we pass it along to the.
and I second, and we have to do roll call
Articulate the
Yeah.
motion, please.
Deals and
to do the peer
the
review.
peer review.
In a second, I'll second it. Roll call vote.
Hi, Chuck.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Georgia.
All right, motion passes. So I'm going to close this portion and continue.
No, we're not closing.
Oh, we're continuing. Sorry. We're continuing to January 22nd. A roll call vote. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Chuck.
Hi, Georgia.
Right.
At what time? I'm sorry.
6:30.
6:30. Oh, good. Thank you.
And then do we have to make another, anything else?
That's it.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
everybody.
Thank you.
And thank you all for coming and participating.